Hello, my name is Aiden Katterman, and this is my teaching video for the March in G Major by C.P.E. Bach, BWV ANH 124. This is a lovely teaching piece that I actually just recently found going through a nice anthology of J.S. Bach and C.P.E. Bach's keyboard music. This is the Willard A. Palmer edition, and that's what I will show you later up close on Zoom here. Now, this piece is written in a very accessible key signature, G major, very straightforward in terms of reading, and so I would place this at about a early, maybe mid-intermediate level piece. It would not be the first Baroque piece I would teach to a student, but it's definitely accessible and has just a few new concepts to introduce after they've studied some of the other Baroque repertoire. So a couple of things I really like about this piece and why I would teach it. And measures 1 to 3, it has a nice introduction to some polyphony, some of that 3-voice texture. Very easy, just a few beats worth of polyphony there, and that's a nice way to get students introduced to that concept. It also has a nice strong driving rhythmic pulse. Being a march, it's in cut time, and so we have that forward driving motion. It's very entertaining and lively, and students really enjoy playing marches and having that kind of energy in their performance. A couple other things to consider, and something I love about this edition, is there's a lot of articulation markings, but they're all written in this edition in a light gray. So you can really kind of take them or leave them. And you can work with a student to talk about stylistic elements of Baroque repertoire and work through those elements together and make those articulation choices. I really do like the articulation here, and that's what I'll get into more detail about later. A couple other things, this one has some nice ornaments, some appoggiaturas in the B section, as well as a simple trill at the end of the A and B sections. The repeats also give it a nice length, so the student can have a little bit more of a fulfilling performance without having to learn 2 more extra pages. Those repeats double the time for the student. And one of the most important and fun elements of this piece when teaching is getting those fast articulation changes. Once again, you decide on the articulation with your student and the interpretation you want to take, but there's a lot of opportunity for those fast changes, which makes it interesting. So thinking about this piece and where I would start with a student, I would not introduce this as the first march they would have played or first Baroque piece they would have played. I typically like to start with the Lully Minuet in D minor, which sounds a little bit like this. Now, I love this piece, and that was just the A section, because this B section is actually a nice introduction to those repeated notes in the left hand. And you can practice that 3-2-1 fingering with students with a very simple right hand as well. So I would have students just go 3-2-1, 3-2-1, and that's going to be really helpful when we get into this march in G major as well. The next piece I would teach to students would be Johann Krieger's Minuet in A minor, and it sounds a little bit like this. This one introduces that 2-voice texture, having the call and response between the 2 voices in the right and left hand, which is very nice for getting a good balance between the hands and helping with that stylistic shaping, as well as there's some opportunities to work on some more defined articulation in this piece. Next, I would teach if the student was ready and they had a little bit more control in terms of finger dexterity and independence of the hands. I would jump them to the Minuet in D minor, ANH 132 from the notebook for Anna Magdalena. Now this one's very popular, very accessible in terms of the minuets, and it sounds a little bit like this. It goes on. There's some nice little ornaments where they have these little mordant-esque ornaments throughout, and you get to work on some more of that defined articulation with some of the tenutos, holding out those long notes and such, which will be very helpful as they progress. Next, I would jump them to either the minuet in B flat major, or maybe the minuet in G major, the most famous one, of course. And then if the student was interested in that march style, I would have them play the march in D major, BWV ANH 122. And this one sounds a little bit like this. About the ending of this march is you have that repeated fingering, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, and you have a little bit of this trill ornamentation as well as some more defined articulation in the left hand, which you could play more staccato or non-legato, just as determined by you in your interpretation. After that piece, I would be ready to introduce the student to the march in G major. And this piece, working through it, we would go through it piece by piece and introduce a lot of those concepts. And check out my teaching video and performance of this piece. So the student at this point would have worked through several Baroque pieces, working through the stylistic elements, including articulation, voicing, contrast between the voices in the two hands, balance, etc. And so they would be ready to work on the march in G major. Now, working through this piece, it's a nice piece, very accessible in terms of reading, and I would work through that first section with them prior to reading through the piece just by rote. I'm going to share my screen with you now so you can take a look at this piece. And here's the edition that I would be using with the student. I really like this because you can see those lighter gray fingerings and articulation markings with the staccatos. The dynamics are also written in gray, and the tempo marking as well. So all of these markings can be used or taken and left behind if you want to do something a little different. Now, starting from the very beginning, that polyphony, which I kind of mentioned earlier, which happens right here in the first measure, beats 3 and 4, I would teach that right hand part just by rote, having the student play just simply the A and F sharp, and then connected with a slur to the B and G, and get the gesture. What you want to focus on with students here is the kinesthetic sense of playing, so they feel comfortable with those notes. If they can feel it and be comfortable, they will be successful with the two-note slur. And that contrasts directly to the second gesture, which is the C.E. to the B, D. And sorry, I should have played that first one staccato, and the second one tenuto. So there's the gesture 1, gesture 2. And getting the correct fingering immediately is going to be essential to getting it in tempo. Now, when they have that first gesture down and the second gesture down, I would have them put them together without a pause between the two. And then we would work through the gesture on measure 2. That would be the same, down, up for the 2-note slur, down, up, and then down, down, or up, down rather. So down, up, or down, up, down. So they'd work through those 2 gestures separately. I would just teach that by rote. Now, working through those repeated notes, if it had been a little while since they'd studied the last march in D major or that Lully minuet, I would review that repeated note fingering with them. A nice way to do that is just to take one hand at a time with the G major scale, going 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, etc. As you go up, and I would work through the right hand and then left, etc. The right hand will play those repeated notes on the second page, which you can see down here at page 2. That right hand has those repeated notes on the D chord that's broken apart here. Now, the fingering is just slightly different. It's 5, 1, 3, 2, and landing with that thumb on those second notes will allow for that 2-note slur. Down, up, 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 down, up, 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 down, up, up, up. And we would continue on. But that will work for both the A section and the B section. So when they have those, I would have them work on it together. Just practicing the feeling of those repeated fingerings. Now, working through that first section by rote, I would then have them take a look at the score and try playing both pieces together, something like this. And we would continue on. The next passage is pretty easy in terms of gesture because it's all connected with one phrase. You could play it maybe with a slight bit of legato or a non-legato touch. And work through that section. I would then go through the gesture at measure 5 through 6, and before I would have them play it, I would actually just close the lid and have them do it with the right hand by itself. As you can see here in the score, they suggest a 2-note slur on the first 2 beats, then followed by 2 staccatos. Now, the interesting thing about this section when you're playing it is that you're almost always tempted to go down, up, and connect those all with 2-note slurs. But the contrast of the articulation gives a really nice lightness to the march, so you don't get bogged down by the slurs too much. So I would have them practice slowly with all 5 fingers saying down, up, 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 down, up, 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 focusing on that arm gesture, and then specifying the fingering that's marked here. 2, 1, 1, 5, 2, 1, 1, 5, down, up, 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 down, up, 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 working through that with just the gesture. Then playing it on the notes. Down, up, 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 down, up, up, up. That will allow the student to immediately apply that articulation there. Then taking the left hand by itself, so you make sure you hold those half notes. So working on that gesture there would help introduce that well, get the student comfortable. Now, something when it comes to reading, and we have ornaments such as the trill down here at measure 7, it's very tempting to play that and to, when you're sight reading it with a student, to just totally skip over it or get stuck there. So teaching the trill by rote beforehand would help them feel very successful, and like that's almost too easy. Simple when they're reading it together. So I would teach that by rote, starting slow, keeping the fingers a little flat, and going the 5-note turn with the last note at the end on the C sharp. Getting that 6-note trill. we'd start slow, and then maybe with the triplets, triplet, accenting it so you get both fingers, triplet, and then working on that flat fingering and bringing it up just a little bit so you get that one little gesture with that trill. Let me lower my camera here so that you can see that just a little bit better. And then we would slowly speed it up. And then you could do the same for the trill at the very end, which is here at measure 20. The B and A. And you can work through bringing a little bit of a forward direction with those trills so that they don't get too heavy and they stay nice and articulate. So after I've taught those gestures, or those ornaments by rote, I would then work on measures 8 and 9, which also repeat here at the end, these gestures of the hands together in this closing cadence. So right here, it's kind of that down, up, up, up motion that we were talking about in measures 5 and 6, but now both hands are doing it simultaneously. So I would start with the down, up, down, up practice that we did earlier with the right hand, and then bring in the fingering, down, up, down, up, down, and ending with a down on the whole note. You can practice this slowly and then increase the speed. You could then take one hand at a time. Down, up, down, up, down. And then left hand, down, up, down, up, down. And then put the two together. Down, up, down. And get the students to feel very comfortable with those gestures there and the correct articulation that you want. Same thing with the end. Down, up, down, up, down. Same gesture pattern, slightly different fingering. So that would be another one to work on in more detail. Now measures 10 and 11, just kind of piecing this together here. We are at 10 and 11. That articulation and fingering in the right hand, which we discussed with those repeated notes earlier, it's important to match that, especially when you get to the beginning of measure 11 in both hands, while keeping them light. So I would just practice that a few times and get the students very comfortable with the change of quarter notes to eighth notes in the left hand as well. And then adding a little bit of shape to that if you want to drive forward with a little bit of a crescendo or a little bit of a swell of sound, you could, or you can save that for measure 12 as it's suggested there. That would be the same exact thing in measure 14 here, where we have those right hand articulations and fingerings the same as the beginning, just on a G chord now. After working through that, I would then take measures 12 and 13, and then 16 and 17, which are those transitionary measures, here, and teach those appoggiaturas in the right hand, making sure that's just very easily understood, that it's just played as 2 eighth notes at the beginning of measure 13, such as, and then you could work on a more non-legato sound, and then changing direction as you go to the ascending pattern following, and building just a little bit into those repeated notes. And same thing with the next pattern here. We would have that nice non-legato sound with a little bit of a crescendo rather. And you could end the phrase right as it's marked here on that C as a nice right hand practice spot, paying attention to the finger change from 5 to 1 and those appoggiaturas as marked. Now, when the student has mastered all of these sections by themselves, I would have them work through longer chunks, hands alone, so that they can get those changes of articulation and mood while keeping the consistency of the rhythm and character. So starting at measure 10, I would go all the way from 10 through to 14. That downbeat there sounds like this. allow the student to get those transitions, keeping everything smooth. Taking the left hand, doing it by itself as well, and then piecing the two together. Once you've worked through those bigger chunks, you could then add in some more focused practice on the hands together, on the transitions, even between the A section and the B, and piece that together with the student. The one last section that I would want to take hands alone is this section right down here at the bottom. And this is up to you, the teacher, to decide if you like this articulation. This would actually come before that hands together practice I just mentioned. But this section right here at 18 and 19, you'll notice the articulation is a little bit different. It's now a 4-beat pattern, or in cut time, 2 big beats. And we have a down, up, 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 down, up pattern. So I'd have the right hand by itself and go slowly down, up, 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 down, up, and really emphasize those gestures. That change in articulation is very nice because it almost changes what the listener expects to hear from the down, up, 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 down, up, up, up pattern, and puts that 2-note slur at the end on beat 4. The fingering here is very helpful for that articulation too, so I'd go slow, 5, 3, 4, 2, 1, 5, 4, 5, and really emphasize down, up, and then it goes right into another 2-note slur, so practice those together, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, and then they can continue down, or up, 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 down, up, and then you could end on the C if you wanted to. The bigger gesture then would sound like this. Down, up, 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 down, up, down, down, up, 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 down, up. When it's at a more performance tempo. All right, and much of this wants to be focused on the, much of what you want to focus on is the precision of the rhythm, the precision of the articulation, and working through those pieces, making sure everything feels secure. At the end, when students have this hands together and at a nice march tempo with a lively character, you could work on more of the big picture phrasing in terms of the A section and contrasting with the B. Maybe a change of dynamics. You could add some embellishments on the repeats. Nice spots for those would include measure 4 here. You could add a little mordent right before you go into measure 5, or a little mordent here, or turn at the end on measure 9. So that could sound like this with the right hand at measure 4. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so an upward mordent rather. And then at the end on the D, I would just do a downward one. And you could land on the D. You could do an upward one too. Or turn. Up to you and the student to decide. And then similar spots on the B section could include right before these appoggiaturas, doing a little mordent or turn there, and then the same thing at the G chord at the end. All right, so that is all of the advice I would have for teaching this piece to a student for the first time working through this March in G major. It's a very lovely, fun, and exciting piece that a lot of students seem to love, and it seems to not be played very much, at least not as much as that March in D major. Don't miss out on the opportunity to introduce this one to your students, and hopefully they will enjoy it as much as you.